All set.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina. Welcome everybody to the September Environmental Sustainability Task Force meeting, which we had to postpone slightly, but there will still be another October one at the end of the month on our regular scheduled day. Can we please start off by doing roll call?
Yes, Susan Andrews.
I am here.
Vice Chair Julian Drix is absent. Catherine Van Amber.
Present.
Carlos Garcia is absent. Jesus Harlequin is absent. Amelia Rose.
Here.
Vadik Kumba. You have 3 present and 4 absent. You do not have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. And I also want to recognize Priscilla de la Cruz, whose nomination to the ESTF is still, we have recommended her, and it is still pending. It's going to be introduced to the City Council any day now. And also want to recognize Councilwoman Helen Anthony for joining us today.
Thank you.
I want to start off on a little bit of a somber note, and first want to just recognize, before we move to the updates from the office, a friend of the task force, a friend of the Office of Sustainability, and a friend of a big helper in creating the climate justice strategy. Eric Kunidowski passed away suddenly on Friday after a brief illness, non-COVID related. And so I just wanted to make sure folks knew that, and that we took a moment to really recognize the important contributions she's made in Providence, and also to the wider Rhode Island. So just wanted to raise that to start. And also want to recognize that Vadik Kumba has joined us.
So noted.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, Erica played a big role in helping shape the climate justice plan. She was with Acadia Center at the time, and we worked with her and leveraged her expertise on a lot of the policy and programs that are in the climate justice plan. And she was just an incredible person to work with, such a bright soul. And it's incredibly tragic to have lost her so suddenly.
Thanks, Leah, for adding that. Sorry to start off on a somber note, but I felt like we really needed to recognize Erica and her contributions. Our official order of business is updates from the Office of Sustainability. Yeah, Leah and Emily, if you have any updates, take it away.
Yeah, happy to. Let me pull up my list here. One note I will start with is on community choice aggregation. The PC has a public hearing scheduled. I believe it's November 1st, 1st or 2nd. I can double check and get that. But that will be a public hearing hosted by the PUC. So they're going through the review process. We already had our public hearing in Providence, but it's another layer, important step in the process. So that is coming up in the beginning of November. Don't anticipate any issues on that front. National Grid has filed as an intervener case. So my understanding is that they do that just so they can stay informed and understand, because they're going to be responding to the low changes that result in the program. They are not opposed or anything like that, as far as I know.
Leah, is it helpful for anyone to attend, or is it just kind of a it happens thing?
I would say I don't know of any issues. I think circle back on that more specifically. I haven't heard of any reason to be, concerned about it not moving forward. It's always good to show support, whether through a letter or so maybe that would be the way to go, just to reaffirm. But if anything changes, I will this group will be the first to know.
Thanks, Leah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I didn't mean to interrupt your updates.
No, not at all.
And
other,
can I just note that Vice Chair Drix has joined the meeting? You've now obtained a quorum.
Thank you, Tina, and welcome, Julian.
now we're
Thank you.
official. All right.
Thank you.
Just a general kind of staff update from my office. We are increasing our capacity. We have reduced the amount of time that we're on the city's work share program. So I am now up to 4.5 days a week. Both Emily and Court are on a 4-day-a-week schedule. And Court just returned to work after her medical leave today. So she is back. We're really glad to have her. She's still digging out from email right now, so she's not going to join this meeting. But she's excited to be back, and we're even more excited to have her back. So that's moving forward. The city still doesn't have a budget for the current fiscal year. We're still operating under the last fiscal year. Councilwoman Anthony probably knows more about that at this point. For our office, what's most important is that we ensure that all of our positions are fully funded in the FY21 budget. So specifically, well, Court's position is grant funded. My position is pretty sure it's like in the code of ordinance. I don't think that could really easily be defunded. The strategy manager position, Emily's position, would be the one that I'm particularly watchful over, just to make sure nothing unusual happens on that front. But that's the one to keep an eye out for.
Leah, can you mention the job posting you guys have up?
Yes, thank you. So we just got the energy manager position posted as of Friday. So that position is open. We don't expect to fill it until January, but we are starting that process now. And we know it can take a little while. So if you know of anyone who would be interested in joining our team and helping the city not only work on its internal energy work and municipal energy efficiency, renewable energy programs, but also there's a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipeline in terms of policy, whether it's community solar or the benchmarking ordinance, which we do hope to move at some point. And especially once we have that position funded and filled, I feel like we'll be ready to move that forward. So lots of exciting policy and programs coming down the pipeline as well. Let me just get back to my list here. Green justice zones, Vadek, feel free to chime in here as well. But we're beginning to meet in our kind of government cohorts, and the community cohorts are being developed. My understanding has got some really great interest from both Olneyville and South Providence, Washington Park area. And the idea is these two cohorts are going to kind of be moving forward on a parallel track, where in government we'll be working with folks at DEM, the planning department, and a few other OER, perhaps, I believe, maybe the AG's office, but really making sure that we're doing the work on the government side of things and in parallel and in collaboration and coordination with and responding to what the community is, the community cohorts are saying they want. And so this will be an ongoing process, but we're really excited to get that started. Vadek, did you want to add anything?
Sure, I can jump in. So as far as like working with the government folks, just looking to work with organizations and institutions that are ready to take that next step that Leah's talking about of community voice in involving community in decision making. So we've had some positive conversations with folks, and that cohort will have its first training or workshop coming up this week, which we're really excited about. We've had some really good interviews with folks for the community cohorts. We've had we've done it probably like 6 or 7 different interviews. Our last one was like a big group interview where we had 5 to 7 people in each of the rooms, and had some real good chemistry and some real good conversations with folks in the community that are really thirsty for doing this type of work. So that those cohorts will be selected by the end of this week, and we will be having our first meeting with them on the 13th of October. So we're really excited on that. So thanks.
Awesome.
Great, thank you, Vadik. And the sort of parallel process to that is the capital improvement plan dollars that we're working to identify projects for. The community feedback that we got from those same kind of green justice zone areas, Olneyville and South Providence, Washington Park, identified priorities being waterfront access in South Providence and resilience hub in ideally both. Our funding, we have $1 million. It's not quite enough to do 2 resilience hubs, so we're going to have to kind of figure out which one we want to prioritize. And the waterfront access, there was potential. We were looking at Public Street as an access point, and there was a lot of positive momentum behind that, filed for CRMC. But there was a land dispute with one of the owners nearby, and from what we, from the land survey informed us that the public right of way actually stops at Allens Ave, and it doesn't go from Allens Ave to the water. I'm not sure if that's entirely the final verdict, if there's more conversation to have about that, but that is the latest kind of barrier on that front. There are still some other options, but none that at this point that we have identified that wouldn't require purchasing additional property.
Can I ask, and I might have missed the meeting on this for the details on that, but are you able to say which landlord it is that is claiming the waterfront access point at that area?
I don't know. I don't have the name, and I don't know I can't imagine that not being public information. I can find out.
While we pause, I also want to recognize that Susanna Yim joined, and she is also one of the folks who we've nominated to be on the ESTF and are waiting for council approval. Welcome. We're just doing updates from the Office of Sustainability, Susanna.
All right, so and then on the resilience hub side of things, we had to do an RFP for design, and then once we have a design, we're hoping to work with a designer who is very community oriented and can really do a great community-led design process. And then with that design, we would go into construction. So the design phase would probably happen maybe winter, spring, and then we probably miss the FY 20 or the 20 calendar 21 construction year, but hoping at the next one. So we do have that flexibility on the timeline. So it's a little bit of a long timeline, but I think we do need that to really do a good process. Emily, do you want to talk about pesticide-free PPD and plastic bag?
Sure. On the pesticide-free front, it's a pesticide-free PPD campaign to reduce the use of neurotoxic chemicals. We're looking at a sort of soft launch of a pesticide-free website in the coming month. And we'll certainly send that around to the task force and our partners to get some early adopters, whether they be residents or institutions that want to commit to being pesticide free. And then in the spring, we'll look to do kind of a bigger, maybe socially distant event and kind of press about pesticide free as people kind of get their gardens ready to go for the spring. And then on a different topic, the plastic bag ban, we've discussed in past meetings that we will not be allowing exemptions on the basis of excess inventory. We're approaching that 1 year mark. So we've made some good progress on getting in touch with all businesses just to ensure that everyone knows about the plastic bag ban and is ready for this shift to no longer allowing those exemptions and enforcement in the coming year. So we've worked with licensing and are able to incorporate some language in the liquor licensing process that acknowledges that businesses should be compliant with the plastic bag ban when they go to renew their liquor license, which is really great. And we also have, we're able to receive a list of all emails. Apparently the business licensing has shifted entirely to email. so that we can email every business with an active business license with information about the plastic bag ban. So we're drafting that now. It's really great that we'll be able to, like, in one swoop, in one constant contact, we'll be able to contact all businesses. And then from there, we'll begin to talk about what enforcement looks like. Of course, there will be warnings and then enforcement, but still kind of creating a strategy for how to go about that equitably.
Yeah, it's certainly been challenging. We understand that small businesses are really struggling from COVID and all the additional hurdles that come with PPE and just day-to-day business stuff. But we also are seeing, I don't know if anyone else is seeing more and more plastic bags at some of the smaller shops in town. And so we want to kind of not let that get too out of hand, where, you know, it's the policy's not being enforced at all. So we are trying to come up with a good strategy that is, as Emily said, equitable and understanding of the circumstances.
And I'm happy to follow up with any businesses if you're aware of anyone that's still using plastic bags or isn't aware of the ban. I'm happy to follow up and provide them with more information and support.
And then the other updates, those are the big things. So I might just stop there. And I think the only other thing update, I guess, would be on the metrics. Emily, do you want to talk about that, the subgroup?
Yeah, sure. We talked about, I believe at the last task force meeting, creating a subcommittee for sustainability targets and metrics. And the goal of the subcommittee is to help the sustainability office refine the number of targets that we've set in the Sustainable Providence Plan, the Climate Justice Plan, and other kind of goal setting documents that we have as an office. And so specifically, I've talked with Amelia and Susanna, who volunteered to be part of that subcommittee. I'd love to loop in someone from the RAJC as well. And if anyone else is interested, we just have to keep it to less than 4 task force members, which is doable. And it's not a huge time commitment. I know that was the main question, I think. We've set 4 meeting dates, 1 in October, 2 in November, 1 in December for an hour each. And we'll kind of set our goals at the first meeting, spend 1 meeting refining the priority targets, spend the next meeting determining what metrics we can use to track those targets, and then making recommendations on what the dashboard will look like, which will loop back with those recommendations to the task force and the RAJC. And I shared with Susanna and Amelia the kind of plan for that series of meetings. Happy to share with anyone else, and we'll certainly let that evolve into whatever we think is most helpful to do this fall.
Emily, you can feel free to share it with me if you're looking
Okay.
for another person or two.
Great.
Thanks, Priscilla and Susanna and Amelia, for stepping up for that. It might not sound like the most exciting thing, but I do think it is really important. So much of our work is dependent on what we measure and how we measure it. So hoping to get a good foundation for this, and then really use that to guide our work. So it is important. So thank you. And I think that those are the big kind of buckets. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions or comments?
I just wanted to say one thing about the waterfront access. I just remember maybe a year ago or something, I heard that the Conservation Law Foundation was working on something in Boston where there was a question about public access on the waterfront. And I don't know if I'll just Google around and see if I can find anything about that, but it had something to do with the museum, the IECA that's up there, and some other businesses along that that stretch of the seaport. So I'll look around and see if I can find anything.
Thanks, Amelia.
Chair Anderbraw, we do have a hand raised on the attendee side. Did you want to allow them to speak?
Yeah, do any other task force members or Councilwoman Anthony have any comments or questions? And then we can call on Doug.
Yeah, I had a question, which I'm happy if this needs to wait for like a later agenda, but I guess in terms of the green justice zones, and I'm assuming one of the agencies involved is the Department of Environmental Management. And Vedic, you mentioned that the conversations have been promising in terms of, you know, their involvement and making more sort of community oriented decisions or decision-making process that's community-centered. I guess I'm just wondering, the reason why I'm asking this is because I've heard recent presentations where DEM has referenced the great work that the city and the REJC is doing. So I'm just wondering, in relation to the green justice zones, is there anything else that's sort of in the works with DEM that we might want to talk about at future meetings, or is it all part of like the green justice zones?
So like right now, the process of green justice zones is beginning, and like right now it's relational. And so it's like really we're in that, we're like just having dinner with each other right now. You know, we're just like getting to know each other, our quirks and stuff like that. We're really gonna start diving into that. And so we don't have, there's not like a defined agenda to say, oh, we're going to be working on this type of policy or working on this sort of ordinance, right? We're not to that space yet. We want to be able to give people the opportunity to get the learnings around like, you know, is structural racism from like government side, and then for community folks to have an understanding of environmental issues and like how the different departments actually function and work. So like that's the space that we're at. So I don't know if that completely answered your question, but I do think that there will be spaces for ESDF to like touch base and to be helpful in like us navigating the network of things in the different green justice zones.
That's great. Yeah, that does clarify it. Thank you, Vedic.
Any other questions or comments? Cool, then it looks like Doug has his hand raised first. Tina, do you mind unmuting him? Hi, Doug.
Doug, you're now unmuted. Oh,
he like remuted.
No, I unmuted. Am I here?
okay.
You're here.
Good. Thank you, everybody, for your great work. Two things in response. Emily, I wonder if you want to send a call out for folks that you're looking for, I could put that on my email send in the neighborhood, Elmwood in South Providence. So if we had a little description of what you're looking for and who to contact, that would be great. So that's up to you, but that's an offer to get more of this information out to the people. Down is the wrong preposition.
For pesticide free or for the plastic bag ban?
For the pesticide free.
Okay, yeah, great.
And if I might suggest that the task force with the plastic bags recommend in the interim reuse and recycle in the interim period of time, so that there's, you know, at least it's a statement to not just have a single use throwaway kind of thing, but, you know, anyway, so thank you for that. And the public street access, if indeed that is privately owned on the lower part of Public Street, I wonder if it can be, if the public can, if the city can help the public, or the task force can help the public understand how that came to be, because we all believed that was a city street all this time. So there's lack of transparency. So who did it? Who were the people involved? What kind of deal was it? What kind of money was involved? When did it happen? So that there's full transparency around that, because I feel like that's needed, given the relationship to waterfront access, equity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in the south side. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Doug.
Welcome.
And it looks like Linda also has her hand raised.
Linda, you've been unmuted.
Thank you. You unmuted me?
Yep, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for championing all your efforts. I have a question for Leah and a comment, and I may ask Councilwoman Helen a question in addition. Leah, you had said that there was a survey. Do you know when it was? Who did it? Was it the city that surveyed it? Because I know CRMC is in the process of conducting a survey once they determine the land parameters.
I don't know exactly who did it. It was probably a private land surveyor company that was hired to do the survey itself.
Okay, well, as of June, the fence was up and the city was disputing had a dispute with the owner. They decided to leave the gate open so people could actually access the waterfront. So as of about 3 months ago, the gate has been open so people can go through. They are kind of leasing out space. A Brown University Transit passenger bus is parked there, what would be or is, I believe, public property. And I also heard that the owner, well, the presumed owner, the guy that thinks he's the owner of, well, he did buy the lot next to Sims, but there is a road that continues to the water. So that presumed owner has asked for a wind survey. So the word is that he wants to put up a turbine there. So I believe that this is a land grab on his part. And guess who his neighbor is? His buddy Sims, who's not going to dispute it as an abutting property owner. So if the city does in fact own that right of way, that land, that narrowly it changes from wider street to narrow access to the water, the city owns that. And I thought that the city was supposedly conducting their own survey. June, July, August, September, October, no survey by the city. And CRMC has got it on their list of things to do, which is coming up, and they are going to survey it. And I believe that the AG's office is very interested in maintaining public access for the public here on Public Street. So that was a question to Leah. And the other issue is CLF, Amy Moses over at Conservation Law Foundation. I already spoke to them and they're really not that interested in getting involved because I don't know why, but I'm going to touch base with them. And National Grid is the other landowner, the other abutting landowner. And I believe that they're all for public access for the public. And we still have an opportunity to have public access there. And I certainly hope that's the case. I don't want to be pushed out. I don't think anybody really wants to be pushed out because of politics. And the other question to Councilwoman Helen is, and to Susan, is the solar siting ordinance possibly coming up down the line for community solar. And I would let you guys discuss it if that's what you want to do. So I'm going to, I guess, leave. No, I don't want to leave. I want to be muted again, please.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Bye.
Councilwoman Anthony, did you have any response you wanted to make about solar siting?
Well, I'd like to comment on the earlier first, because I believe that Councilman Espinal has already introduced some sort of resolution, Linda, about this street. I had no idea there was any kind of issue on the ownership. And so it seems to me, I'll certainly reach out to him, but it seems to me that, if that's a city-owned asset, we would want to establish that and certainly take some sort of action to preserve it. So I'd be happy to reach out to him and see, what he's doing on this issue. I'm glad to hear that CRMC is taking it, seriously enough to do a survey, because that's expensive. Certainly it'll be a matter of what's on public record, but if there was any kind of transaction transferring ownership, I mean, there should be some sort of record in that. That should also be on the at the Registry of Deeds. So that will determine quite a bit, and give us quite a few answers. But I'd be happy to reach out to Councilman Espinal, because this is a really important issue. I had no idea this was being contested. And then in terms of community solar, I don't know if we have, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what we have on the books in terms of the ability. I don't even know if we have a solar ordinance. This is terrible, because this is what I do for my business. I don't know if we even have a solar ordinance for the city of Providence. So I'm going to have to look into that and get back to you, unless someone here knows. I'm sure that Leah or Sue.
I can speak to that a little bit. So we don't have, our zoning allows for solar on, rooftop solar by right. You don't need to get special approval unless you're in a historic district. So we have pretty good ordinances for solar. With regards to, and I'm not sure, Linda, if this is what you were referring to, but the solar siting is more about managing solar arrays being developed in like large arrays on like green fields, as an example. And so trying to protect rural communities from having their farmland and trees cut down for large solar facilities. Providence does not have that issue.
Thanks, Leah and Councilwoman. Just knowing we have a bunch of other things on the agenda, and Linda, I know you've reached out to me before about community solar, so that's something we can take up on a future agenda. But knowing that we have a few things left, and Amelia has a great presentation planned, I just want to make sure we get to that. But before we do that, if there are any updates from ECRI, Priscilla, those that would, and no pressure, I don't think I flagged for you that I was going to ask you this.
It's okay. I can be really brief. We have a board meeting tonight where we'll actually start planning or sort of forming a strategic planning subcommittee. And the subcommittee is going to guide ECRI through the strategic planning process in working with a consultant. So we actually have seed money from our affiliate, National Wildlife Federation, to hire a consultant. So we're hoping that we can release an RFP in the coming months and hire a consultant that can not only do strategic planning with us, but also has a focus on racial equity as well, and some knowledge on working in the energy or environmental community. So tonight we'll be hopefully voting on that MOU that we need to get that seed money from National Wildlife Federation. So that's happening tonight. And then on October 19th, our political committee's meeting to hopefully finalize our green report card. And that's the report card that we release biannually to evaluate the governor and legislators on how they're doing on energy and climate. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Priscilla. And I think that you guys maybe wrote a resolution. I might be making this up. Did you guys write a resolution about the bus hub?
Yes, actually the resolution was written by the transit riders. So ECRI is going to vote on that resolution tonight. Thank you, Sue, for reminding me of that. So that's on our agenda for tonight. And I know that recently there was a hearing was it last week? About, yeah, so ECRI is going to pass its own resolution tonight, hopefully.
Awesome, thanks. And Councilwoman Anthony, were you about to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to say I introduced along with my fellow councilmen, many of my fellow councilors, a resolution opposing the proposed plan, the write-up plan. And we did finally hold a public hearing last week on Wednesday. And then there will be a hearing, I believe at 4:30 on Thursday, where the committee will. Wednesday, where they will vote it in the committee, and hopefully it will be supporting our resolution against it, and then it will go back to city council floor. As you know, we don't have approving authority, but we feel very strongly, many of us, that this has just been a horrible lack of transparency and process, and that really it should be, put on hold until we do have a public process around this. And so, but I haven't heard any indication that message is being heard.
Quick question, Councilwoman Helen Anthony, and for folks who are raising awareness to this issue, is there a way where I could be sent the link to join said meetings, as there are many people in Providence who have been organizing around this issue to push back, who would like to exercise their narratives?
Well, I unfortunately, the public hearing was the time to speak. I mean, we had it's just been I'm going to just say horribly handled, and I am sorry for that. But we did have a public hearing, and that was really the only opportunity. And I think it was the first time that the public has been asked to speak this issue. And I wish we had more organization around it. It just didn't happen as it should have, I don't believe. So that part is over for us. I mean, because the meeting that's is being convened tomorrow, unless Tina, you can clarify that, being the clerk. But I think the public has been heard. I mean, and so I'm not sure they're going to be opening up for public comment, but there will be a number of council people, myself included, who are not on the committee, that will be advocating for support of the resolution. And then hopefully we'll be voting it up from city council floor. But again, I think we need to hear, transit riders, all these organizations, ECRI, they'll be, if there's any more public process, I think you'll be notified. I think you'll be here, but I'm not sure it will be through the city council that will happen, unfortunately.
Sure, I can confirm that the public hearing was last Wednesday. We did notice that in the newspaper 10 days prior to the hearing. There was a sign-up sheet where people had to sign up to provide testimony. At the hearing on Wednesday, and with all our other meetings, we post on our open meetings portal. We provide the link to the meeting ID for you to join the meeting and listen to what's being said. It's at the call of the chair whether she allows anyone to speak from the public. That's up to the chair of any committee to do so. You can provide testimony in writing to all council members, but you can also send it to clerk.providenceri.gov. We usually try to check that email site every day to see if there's any kind of testimony. If we do get some, we do pass it along to all the council members.
So can people still do that, Tina, for the one that's happening this week? Even if they can't speak publicly at it, they could still send testimony to the clerk's office?
Absolutely.
And please feel free to join that meeting.
Absolutely.
On the chance. So you get that through the Providence public portal. Is that what we call it? The Providence
Correct.
Public portal. If you search
open meetings portal. Yeah.
Open meetings portal, you'll get the agenda and you can link into that meeting, and then we'll see you in the attendee portion. And I'd be happy to ask if the public can speak again. I'm not sure what the response will be, but I'd be happy to ask.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Susanna.
Councilwoman.
I'm sorry, I have to go to another meeting. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot today.
Thank you so much for participating, Councilwoman.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Great. So I think the next thing, I'm just making sure I'm not lying to you because I'm doing this on memory. Yes. The next thing on our agenda is the awesome presentation from Amelia. And I will let her take it away. Actually, before I let her take it away, I'll also say that next month we'll be getting a presentation from the Providence Tree Plan Committee on some research they've done, and it pairs really well with what Amelia is going to share with us this week. So I'll just little teaser for next time. But Amelia, if you could, not that Amelia is the teaser, me saying this is the teaser. Amelia's presentation stands on its own. Sorry, I need some water or something. I will let Amelia take it away. I'm going to mute myself.
Thanks, Sue. And I'm going to try and share my screen. So just let me know if it doesn't work or hold on. Let's see. Okay. So I'm actually going to start. I'm going to do a kind of abbreviated presentation. Sue has seen this presentation. I did it for the Nature Conservancy board and staff. I'm happy myself or another member of our staff would be happy to give this presentation for another audience if you are interested in another audience receiving it. We are part of a grant from the Kresge Foundation called the Climate Safe Neighborhoods Project or Alliance, and Groundwork USA, which is our parent organization, got this funding for 5 affiliates around the country. So Groundwork, Rhode Island, we focused on Pawtucket and Central Falls, but the data also focuses on Providence. So you'll see the maps for Providence as well. And we also, the other groundworks were Denver, Colorado, Richmond, Virginia, and Elizabeth, New Jersey. And there's a new cohort of additional cities. If you're interested in looking at the Groundwork USA website, Lawrence, Massachusetts, Cincinnati, Ohio, San Diego, California, and another one, I can't remember all of them. But all of us are getting this sort of same formatted story map focusing on historic redlining. So redlining happening in the 1930s till, not kind of modern day redlining, but kind of the past. And then modern tree canopy, looking at satellite mapping to see if there's a relationship between those historic kind of housing discrimination policies that were enacted and in practice in different cities in the United States for many years, and whether it has a relationship with tree canopy today, and more to the point, heat islands and climate resilience. I'm going to share I'm actually going to go through, I'll show you just a quick version of our, I can't find because it's hidden, that's why. Here we go. So I'm not going to do this whole thing, but I'm just going to kind of go quickly through. We got funding from the Kresge Foundation, the JPB Foundation, and also the Department of Health for different aspects of this project. And, actually, I think he's changed never mind. I'm gonna exit this because I think my other staff person, here we go. Changed the format of it because from the presentation before. So this is an example of what we'll see later on when I go into the mapping section, but just to tell you a little bit about our project, the staff person at Groundwork Rhode Island who's leading this, his name is Kufa Castro, and he's been focusing, basically organizing our youth, high school youth program called the Green Team around this issue and organizing other residents around climate resilience, focusing on heat and flooding. And this map that you see is one of the kind of organizing tools that was given to us through this this funding and this project. So we'll talk about all these a little bit later on, but just a few pictures of our green team. We did a big survey in Pawtucket and Central Falls of residents. We received about 180 responses in English and Spanish back to our surveys and asking people about their concerns. It sounds similar to the climate, green justice zones type of, maybe not the same exact organizing that happened, but just sort of asking people, residents, about their concerns related to climate change. And one of the biggest things that came out of it was the lack of trees. It's very, if anyone's been to Pawtucket or Central Falls, is very apparent. And so that's been something that we've taken on as an organization to look at how do we respond. And so we've done a lot of different youth-led projects where we've done community outreach, and we have done some tree planting projects, and we installed raised bed gardens at some residents' homes and some rain barrels and that sort of thing. And here's some more tree planting. We've done some focused on elementary schools in Pawtucket, especially. And one of the things that the Kresge Foundation really wanted us to do was to come out with a policy objective at the end of all of this sort of learning and getting residents together and getting the youth and doing a lot of education and talking and stuff, but coming out with a policy or advocacy goal. And so our goal is around convincing the city of Pawtucket to change their tree planting policy rather than just being a first come, first serve kind of tree planting where a resident will contact the city to get a tree planted in front of their home or on their property, or I guess just in front of their home, not on their property. But instead the city would actually prioritize heat islands in vulnerable areas and do more proactive outreach. So that's something that we're working on right now. I'm happy to send, I have a few like videos and links and things in this presentation I'd be happy to share later on if people are really interested in this this project or learning more, because there's a couple of good, like this is a good video from the Virginia Science Museum and stuff about heat islands and whatnot. So I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go back to this. So before I go into Pawtucket and Central Falls, I think he took it out. So I'm gonna go to, I'm actually gonna show you Richmond, Virginia first, because I like to compare it to Pawtucket Central Falls. So we're gonna see, here's groundwork, Richmond, Virginia. This is where the project started. And it actually came out of an academic researchers at the University of Richmond who were looking at this specific question around tree canopy and redlining. And you can see, you'll see the same format with our project. But I wanted to show you their map a little bit because it's a little different in Pawtucket and Central Falls and Providence. And I don't want people to come away from this presentation thinking that redlining was not an issue or has not been an issue in Pawtucket or in Rhode Island. It certainly has. But the maps and the impacts are very stark in some of the other cities if you look at the different maps. And Richmond, Virginia is an incredibly stark example. So this is their residential redlining map from the 1930s. 1937 has the date here. And if for folks who aren't familiar exactly with what redlining was, there's a nice description here focused on giving the definition and sort of the background on how redlining came to be, where in 1933, the federal government established the Homeowners Loan Corporation, or HOLC, as part of a New Deal program to stabilize and encourage homeownership during the Great Depression, and the introduction of the federally backed mortgages that all of us are more familiar with these days. And the HOLC, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, needed to provide guidance to lenders, to both internally and to private lenders, regarding which neighborhoods were considered safe or risky for lending purposes. And to develop this guidance, the federal government hired private surveying companies to develop residential security maps like the one below. And so many major metropolitan areas around the country got these maps made of them. And you can see that there are certain red areas, there are yellow areas, there are blue areas, and there are green areas. And so redlining, the term comes from the actual like marker or pen that was used, that was red, to mark out what were seen as riskier neighborhoods to do financial transactions and to do lending and to offer these federally backed mortgages that would help and promote homeownership. The green areas are the safe neighborhoods, safe for lending. The blue are slightly less, but still, termed, safe for lending. Yellow areas are sort of riskier. And you can see here the legend. Green is first grade, blue, second grade, yellow, third grade, and then red was fourth grade and seen as sort of a no-go zone or very risky for lending. And I just like to show the Richmond, Virginia example because it's so stark, the segregation of the neighborhoods. And as you might suspect, a lot of the decisions about what perceived risk and perceived safe in terms of lending was those decisions were made along racial lines and who was living in each neighborhood. Richmond, Virginia, obviously, there's a significant African American population and a significant white population. And it seems they were very segregated and probably still to this day. So just, you can read more about this. Residents in redlined areas could not receive loans to purchase homes in the neighborhoods. I'll go through that later. I just want to show, here's the map of Richmond, Virginia again. And here is, they digitized the redlining or the different color codes. I'm just going to go to the tree canopy cover so we can see that. And then I'll go to Pawtucket and Rhode Island. Sorry, I keep saying Pawtucket and Central Falls. So here you can see, this is the actual tree canopy cover, the modern, today tree canopy cover. You can see very clearly the difference between areas that were green lined, which are over here, and areas that were red lined, which have very few trees. This is all satellite imagery. So just keep this in mind. I think it's, it's a very sad thing, but it's an interesting way to look at tree canopy cover, how zoning decisions and decisions that are made in the 1930s still reverberate and have a very strong impact today. So now I'm going to go over to Rhode Island. And so this is the exact same format. They did the story map. It was a GIS specialist who works at Groundwork Milwaukee in Wisconsin. He created these story maps for each of our affiliates. So this is the Central Falls Mayor, James Diosa, with our Youth Green team a couple of years ago. And sorry if you hear my child yelling in the background. She's learning anger right now. All right. So redlining, so the same thing. So you'll recognize the same description of what redlining is. Here are the maps of Central Falls and Pawtucket, and then I'll go to Providence next. So as you can see in Central Falls and Pawtucket, it's a smaller, obviously there are smaller cities. Richmond, Virginia, as you saw before, is a bigger city. Just a few red lined areas. Just this part of Pawtucket here and this part of Central Falls here. And then this is Providence. I find this so interesting, as a historical perspective, like, these are like little scratch marks on an actual map, so someone was physically marking them up with red marker, which I just always find really interesting to think about. So this is, I'm trying to move my thing up here. So here is a red lined area in Providence. This is the North Burial Ground here in North Main Street. This is sort of like the Stop and Shop Peter Pan bus zone, if people are familiar with that area. And then another redlined area is Fox Point here, which was in the 1930s a Black Cape Verdean neighborhood. Another interesting thing about Providence, so the only green zone is the east side around Brown University here. There's a lot of blue, different areas here and up in the northern part and the Elmwood area. There's a lot of yellow, like most of the city is yellow, which is sort of perceived, sort of risky. So that's another interesting difference with, Richmond the maps we saw before. There were more more neighborhoods, first of all. There's more redlined areas, more green-lined areas compared to Providence and Pawtucket and Central Falls. Just something to note. There's a few green areas down here going into Cranston, where probably modern day Cranston. I'm not sure if they were part of Providence back in the so this is a 1935 map. And so under, just to reiterate the point, under the redlining practices of the homeowners loan corporation, neighborhoods were graded according to their perceived lending risk. In addition to the quality of housing stock, race and ethnicity were the primary qualifiers of that risk. And the safest or green line neighborhoods were graded A and contained high quality homes and white residents. The riskiest or redlined neighborhoods were graded D and contained poor quality homes and residents of color. And just another interesting, fact today, nearly 75% of the neighborhoods that were graded as high risk, redlined under the Hulk program, are low to moderate income, and 64% are considered minority neighborhoods today. All right, so here is a graph of all of the neighborhoods that were participating, all the cities that were participating in our groundwork nationwide program. So this includes all the cities in Rhode Island. It includes Richmond, Virginia, Denver, Colorado, and Elizabeth, New Jersey. And so you can see, I'm not sure if people's, I'm trying to move it so I can see here. So moving from the A grade to the D grade, you can see an increase in surface temperature, land surface temperature, the pink, an increase in the amount of impervious surface, which is concrete, asphalt, roofs, all the, heat capturing non-green spaces in cities, and then tree canopy cover going down. And this is for, so you can see the trends are very much showing a strong relationship between redlined neighborhoods over here with higher land surface temperature, much lower tree canopy cover, and more impervious surface compared to the A grade. And so as we, so that's for all of the different cities that we looked at. And so here is Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls again, taking the residential security maps, and they digitize them. So you can go, I'll be happy to I can send the link, or Sue can send the link to everybody to, so you can take a look at this and play around with it, look for your neighborhood, whatever you want to do. It's all GIS based now. So you can see the green lined neighborhood around east side. You can see the two redlined areas. Interestingly, I think as I get to know these communities and kind of figure out why these areas might have been redlined, flooding comes to mind as a big issue for all of these sort of low-lying areas or areas with heavy industry, which is another factor. It doesn't preclude the fact that people still lived in those areas and continue to live in these areas. so they were redlined for a variety of reasons, and the people who were living in these areas were lower income and typically people of color. Or in the case of Central Falls and Pawtucket, sometimes white ethnic minorities as well, Portuguese or Italian or other folks who were discriminated against in a previous era. But so that's interesting, but just all these yellow areas I think are also just to think about how much of Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls were seen as risky for lending and how that has impacted our cities today. All right, so I'll come back up to just focusing on Providence. Here is tree canopy cover. Sorry, my daughter is crying. Background. I mean, there is certainly a relationship. You can see in the red-lined areas, there's very few trees. A lot of the yellow-lined areas also, very few trees. And the green-lined area, quite a few trees. But that's one thing to think about with Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls. It's sort of, unlike Richmond in that map that we saw before, it's hard to kind of compare one part of the city compared to another part of the city. It's more of a regional difference. So if you compared, Central Falls, for instance, was, it used to be part of Pawtucket and part of Lincoln were taken off to incorporate the Central Falls in the 1800s. And, there was a reason for that because it was basically a mill city that, and there was racial and ethnic factors in that decision as well. But if you compare Central Falls to Lincoln today, which we can't see on this map, unfortunately, you would definitely see a stronger tree canopy difference. But you can still see it in Providence. But I think one of the things that this map shows me as well is that there's a lot of tree need, citywide. So it'll be interesting to have that conversation next month. And we do get a little bit of tree, just to compare, an urban area. I can scroll out or zoom out here. So this is the full map. Just the Pawtucket, Central Falls, Providence, historical mill cities, 19th century, based on 19th century industry, not a lot of trees, not a lot of thought put into the kind of quality of life for people living here, and mainly more of the focus being on industry and producing things that were then sent out. So more kind of an extractive relationship, economic relationship. But definitely, this is a more rural area of Rhode Island compared to the city. There's obviously a big tree difference. So I'll put the map back here. Oops, there we go. Here we are looking at impervious surface. So you can also explore the redlined areas in comparison with looking at the relationship with impervious surface. Impervious surface and tree canopy together can create the kind of land surface temperature differences that you can see between different neighborhoods in Providence. This is the Woonasquatucket. So this is sort of the downtown area up into Olneyville. This is always my favorite because this is the Huntington Business Park down by Matchfog Pond. It's like this big red zone. So there's a little pocket. These, a lot of the city, the South Providence here have definitely the land surface temperature is looking higher than compared to over here with it, which is the east side. So in Rhode Island, here's the same bar graph, but this is just for Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls, and not the other cities. So you can see similarly the land surface temperature. The relationship is not Interestingly, it's not entirely from the A grade to the D grade of green-lined areas to red-lined areas. It's not a huge difference in terms of land surface temperature. And it even goes higher in the yellow lined areas. And then the impervious surface does grow quite a bit. And then the tree canopy certainly goes down a lot from A to D. But the land surface temperature is just, you know, I think it's just what we can take from this. You can sort of form your own opinions, but my analysis is just that that Providence, Pawtucket, and Central Falls are just covered in impervious surface, and there's a wide variety of need, you know, kind of a wide need or big need across the three cities for reducing pavement and reducing temperatures and increasing the tree canopy kind of everywhere. But certainly the tree canopy is there's quite a difference. It's almost double the tree canopy in the A neighborhoods compared to the red-lined neighborhoods. So then they kind of talk, the story map continues to take that data about redlined areas, tree canopy cover, impervious surface, land surface temperature, and also to add in other vulnerabilities. So around the demographics of the people who live there, the concentration of poverty, and then created a climate vulnerability index, like a number, to be able to compare one census tract to another. And I'll put this on Providence. So the heat vulnerability index. So looking at the land surface temperature, the tree canopy cover, the impervious surface, and then kind of adding the percentage of the households in poverty to create a new number based on this color-coded chart from blue to red. And you can see a lot of Providence is vulnerable to heat. The heat vulnerability index is quite high all across the sort of west and downtown Olneyville and South Providence areas. Here they've added the overlay of the red-lined areas and the yellow-lined areas. You don't hear about yellow lining very much, but I feel like that, you know, that matters a lot, especially it seems in Providence. Here they've added flood vulnerability and flood zones. So as we all kind of can guess, around the Woonasquatucket River into Olneyville, the downtown area, all of that is a great flood risk. Here's a bit of Washington Park. And here's, I guess this is lower South Providence next to the 95. And you can also click into any of these block groups, and you can see the heat vulnerability index. You can see the percent impervious surface, the tree canopy cover, 2%, which is scary and crazy. The land surface temperature, the average, and the number of households in poverty. You can do that for any of these block groups, which I think is great if you want to go more detailed. And then that's pretty much it. This just goes into more neighborhood profiles around Central Falls and Pawtucket. So I won't go into all of that, but you can feel free to look at that in your, actually there is a little bit more in your spare time, you know, nights and weekends. There's a little bit of information about immigration. They've added information about the percent Hispanic or Latino into each block group, you know, with information about, again, the heat vulnerability index and the ethnic composition or the density of Hispanics and Latinos in a certain neighborhood. I think that was done primarily because we were more focused on Central Falls, which just has a much higher percentage of, I mean, not that Providence doesn't have a high percentage of Latinx community, but that was why they kind of took that, profiled that one in particular. Median household income, also more information that you can look into. And all right, that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm happy to take any questions or any comments.
Thank you, Amelia. That was amazing. And if you send me those links, which I think maybe you already did. So yeah, you already did. I can send them.
I'll try. I'll do it again.
I think they're at the top of my inbox. I just realized you had sent them to Tina beforehand. I think you CC'd me. But I can send those out to task force members so you guys can dig in. Does anybody I see members of the public with their hands raised, but before we get there, does anyone from the Office of Sustainability or task force members have any comments or questions? It was really comprehensive.
I'll just say that thank you so much, Amelia, for that really eye-opening presentation, and the graphics of just being able to like see the red line district and like the clear differences in percentages and whatnot is fascinating and horrifying. So thank you so much for the presentation.
Any other comments or questions?
Amelia, thank you so much for this presentation. It was amazing. We're gonna Sunrise right now. We are building out curriculum to teach young people what is environmental racism. And so we're definitely going to, use the digitalized map. I don't know, what's the appropriate language to say what you just showed us, incorporate that. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Echo the thanks as well. And I remember seeing some of the maps earlier when they were sent out and just scrolling through them, and especially in Pawtucket and Central Falls as well. Something I'm wondering kind of how you and Kufa and the team have kind of wrestled with or thought about with it in terms of how the geography of where people live changes over time as people get kind of displaced out of neighborhoods and pushed into other neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Thinking about, how Fox Point was, historic Black, historic Cape Verdean neighborhood, and kind of where the industrial waterfront area had been. And then with the highway being built and urban renewal and kind of, the kind of creation of South Side as the South Side we know, and a kind of, intentional policy decision of the time to shift that, and in other places as well. And so just wondering kind of like when we look at these historic maps and then try to map it onto the present, how we reflect and represent kind of where things change as the built environment and as people get pushed around to different areas. I don't know. It's a more. I don't know if there's an answer to that necessarily. I'm just wondering, how that came up in conversation in the project and kind of thinking about history and maps and all of that.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that actually, because sometimes the story isn't quite as clear cut as this was a redlined area and now it's still a high poverty area, and there's a direct correlation because gentrification does happen, especially in the example of Richmond and in Denver. I mean, the growth of those cities is really unbelievable, and even in Pawtucket and Central Falls, there's more development, like turning historic mill buildings into lofts that young professionals live in, and so there might be higher incomes, but we sort of we've talked about that, like what do we care if there's tree canopy in certain neighborhoods where people can afford to have air conditioning. So it's so I think what you're raising is just a it's a really good discussion question. Based on these maps, it's like these maps only show a certain snapshot and only a slice of the pie, where you need to really delve into all the different transitions and neighborhood changes and even what was I gonna say? I just lost my train of thought about that, but basically, but the issue with being able to compare one part of the city to another part of the city. That's also something that's very different, like with New England cities versus a southern city or a western city that are bigger, where we look at Lawrence, Massachusetts, it's kind of coming into our cohort and is going to be doing this as well. And they don't even have a redlining map in Lawrence. There was no redlining map created. It was just, you know, Lawrence was kind of, I think, was sort of seen as a sacrifice, or it was seen as an industrial city that was, where things were produced and things were taken and extracted out of that city versus there being sort of like a rich section and a poor section of the same city. And I think that's a similar to Central Falls and similar to Pawtucket, a little less so with Providence, but still, you know, so it's not quite the same story as what like Richmond, Virginia can talk about in terms of like the segregation and the kind of the clear choices that were made that benefited one side of a city versus another. It's a little bit more of a complex story. And I think New England, just the history of New England also feeds into that as well.
Thanks, Amelia. I'm realizing it's just a few minutes before 5:30. We're going to continue this discussion next time with the presentation we'll get from the Providence Tree Plan Committee folks. And they'll be digging in also on a question that Carlos has brought up a few times around like parks conversion and different uses of parks and the difficult decisions that come when you do convert green space into non-green space and some of the thinking going into there. So this kind of, you know, where there's green space, where there are trees, which neighborhoods are prioritized, that'll continue with, I almost said next week, but the presentation that we'll be engaging with at the end of the month. So I don't want to cut off conversation, but I also know we've just lost Priscilla and I think we're losing a few other people right at 5:30. So I also want to see if there are any other updates around and oh wait, before that, I just really want to thank Amelia because that was an amazing presentation. And I'll send around her website because that was just like so much amazing info for us to dig in on. And we'll also move us to updates around the table, if anyone has any. Okay, maybe we don't have any. That's fine too. And then we always reserve a few moments for public comment. And so I'll just check. It looks like we have 2 people with their hands raised. It looks like Doug, you have your hand raised if you want to join us again.
I think I'm there.
You're here.
I'm in. Good, good. Amelia, I bow to you. Fabulous, 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 fabulous. So 2 things I wanted to bring up today, and I didn't know about this connection between redlining and tree canopy, but it makes perfect sense. And I wanted to talk about heat islands and in the neighborhood. And I know that Amelia knows, and maybe some of you know, that I've been focusing on the Peace Street area in Providence, which has a multi-acre heat island associated with the old St. Joseph's Hospital building that's owned by Paolino Properties. There's a community garden there that I manage, 46 plot community garden. This year, when it was 92 in the garden, it was about 100 degrees. We had drought. You know, the soil was dry, like down 10 inches deep. It was very, very severe. So, and the other piece I wanted to bring up that is related is a recent, very severe pruning of our street trees by National Grid. So many of the trees that we've planted over the years, we saw this summer be chopped. You cannot even believe it. Trees that were full and beautiful were not just brought back to the previous cut, but were chopped like 10 feet away from the wires. So many of our street trees now on our city street, in our streets in Elmwood, which I can speak of, I can't speak of other neighborhoods, are in the shape of a Y. And how does that policy impact sustainability and impact climate change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think along with the heat island piece, I'm going back then now to the last piece. There's the current zoning, I think, for parking lots that are being updated is that for every 10 cars, there needs to be planted 1 tree. And I'm not sure if that is sufficient enough for established identified heat islands to really remediate. The other thing that I wanted to say is, since I've moved here in Providence, and when Keep Providence Beautiful began planting trees, and we wanted trees. So there were only 3 trees on my street when I moved in. 1 was dead. And I've probably been responsible for planting over 400 trees in my local neighborhood. And so when I see the trees getting trimmed or cut, it just pains me greatly. It would be great in my lifetime, I'm 72 years old, it would be great in my lifetime to know, from say 1985 to 220 on these identified, 6-7 streets around Peace Street, what difference that's made. And so I think if there could be some kind of, I would like to know that for me, but I think there could be some kind of measure in that. We're talking about metrics again, that might be helpful for other people. So if they understand in certain neighborhoods, if they even plant 10 trees, they're making this much difference, So I think that might help people understand that. And the other thing is I want to pass on, Amelia, all your great information to the School 360 on Thurbers Avenue that I'm working with. Debbie Schimberg and I have been asked if we'd work with them to help them shape how they're thinking about placing their curriculum this year, and it's very exciting. And the Wheeler School Cityside program that I've worked with, we've had some deep conversations, and they are actually focusing their year's curriculum on this area in the Northern Elmwood neighborhood. And I'll share that with them. And it's very, very exciting that we're having the youth come in, and we're going to be giving them tools to really look at environment, understanding, I think the history of redlining, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, tree canopy, and looking at all these things. So I said a lot. I just want to thank you so much for the work that you're all doing, and Leah, for you stewarding this all forward in the past few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And we bow to you, 400 trees. Wow, that's amazing. What an amazing personal individual contribution. That's really inspiring.
It just needed to be done. I'm not looking for accolades. I'm not, I don't want anything named after me. I want to make a difference. That's all. I just want it to be a difference, but I would like to understand what kind of difference it's made. And if it's at all significant, anyways, thanks.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
It looks like Susan Gorlick also has her hand raised for public comment. Again, also knowing that we'll continue this conversation next time. I just want to put that out there. This is not the only opportunity.
I don't see her. What's her name?
Susan? It looks like she has her hand raised, but let me know if I'm just totally misseeing that. It looks like Susan Gorlick under attendees. But maybe she had it up and not anymore or something.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh, yep.
Okay, sorry, just that I've been raising my hand so long, I didn't know whether you could. Thanks for getting back to me at the end. First of all, I just want to bring out 2 points. Redlining is the consequence of housing segregation, not the other way around. Second of all, and early on, I think this is a comprehensive for all of you, talked about Leah Bamberger and talked about how coordinating with the city. And I think Amelia, you're mentioning about City of Providence, you don't see that stark correlation between tree canopy and the heat index is because the City of Providence is a lot smaller than Richmond, Virginia. And also it's fragmented by a lot of water bodies, which that also affecting the heat thing. But the more important is, since all of us try to improve the Providence city, is more focused on, like Doug mentioned too, the asphalt and parking lot is impervious, the correlation between impervious surface and that also have a direct correlation. So I think, I'm not sure it's Leah or Amelia mentioned that coordinating with the city planners instead of just, planting trees upon request of residential, I think it's very important to look at this comprehensive picture. That way we can address, more than one issues at a time. So that's all I need to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Susan. It's great to hear from you. And stay tuned for our next meeting, which is the 26th of October, because we're going to talk more about that comprehensive approach, I think. And it looks like we have one final hand, and I think that it is Linda. Yeah, sorry, I don't have my glasses on. Are you there, Linda? Oop.
Now, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Amelia, for that great presentation. And living in Washington Park in the hottest spot of the city, near the port, in the hospital, I'm living in a heat island. We all know that. It's been pretty hot here lately. And I'd like to just put it out there, something that Susan said about working with city planning is to, obviously we're working on the curbing issue. So, we can't plant a tree where there's no curb, and we're hoping to create curbing in our little neck of the woods and in other places, so we could plant trees. But also, I think we shouldn't even ask. I think we, any development, any city street, we should just plant the trees. Like on the business section of Eddy Street, there's a lot of absentee landlord and commercial, and we should just plant the trees. Like, don't ask, just do it. Like Meeting Street School planted trees on their sidewalk. The other side of the street has no trees. I think the more trees we put in, the better, the healthier, the more peaceful our neighborhood will be. It's safer, cleaner, greener, all that. And I'm going to leave it at that because I could just go on and on. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Linda. That's a really great point. Any other final comments by anyone on the task force? Awesome. Jennifer, do we need a motion to adjourn? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, do you still have a quorum?
Let's see, we have Amelia, Catherine, Vatic, Julian. How many do we need? Oh, and me, 5. Yeah, we have a quorum.
Yes, you need a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I was like, we only have 4. Can I please have a motion to adjourn?
I'll do it once. Request a motion to adjourn.
Any second?
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Awesome. Anyone all in favor? Anyone opposed? Awesome. Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amelia, for the presentation, and everybody for your participation. See you in a few weeks. Thank you, Jennifer.
Bye.
Thank you.